Welcome to Delightfully Dysfunctional, a podcast about navigating the emotions of the human condition and the challenges that come with it. I'm Keilani Persian Mason, a psychotherapist and life coach with James Timmons, an ever-curious human. This is not a replacement for mental health therapy. Please seek out mental health care if that's what you're needing. This is an opportunity for self-healers to dive deep and understand more about themselves. All right, welcome back to Delightfully Dysfunctional. I'm Keilani, and this is my co-host, James.
Hi, guys.
And today we're excited because we have our first guest who will be joining us soon. It's Dr. Sabrina Hadeed, and she is a psychotherapist. Her office building is actually right next to mine. We've become friends, but more than that, we share an equal passion for psychedelic-assisted medicine, which I've shared some information about on the podcast, but she is a wealth of knowledge, and so I'm really excited for us to learn more and to maybe convert James to the idea.
I'm so nervous, but I'm also, like, I had shared previously that I am just indoctrinated to be almost skeptical on this issue, but I'm forcing myself to be open-minded as well.
To be curious.
Yeah, to be curious and just to be educated. So, and I expect there to be like a fire hose of information with all of this. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. If I just start screaming for no reason, well, you guys will know the reason.
Well, you'll have two therapists here to talk you through it. So don't worry. I promise she's not bringing any psychedelics to the podcast, so you're not going to be... see?
Well, that's a little disappointing.
I was also skeptical when information first started to reach my ears, and it took me a while to warm up to the idea. So I'm not even mad about you being a skeptic. I kind of like a tricky one.
Yeah, well, I mean, but yeah. I'm a good skeptic because I don't typically die on the hill, but I'm always open to hearing more information, and then I try to be objective about it, you know.
Yeah.
And so, we'll see how it goes. But how are you doing?
I'm good. I felt like I needed a weekend from my weekend because we had 3 birthday parties, one of which we hosted, and my house still looks like it's a birthday party. And it's Wednesday.
Which is fun.
It's fun. It's like a party forever. But it was really busy, but it was really fun. And I'm on the cusp here because my little girl's actual birthday is this Saturday, and she's 2. And, you know, it just is weird when you think of, like, I don't know how much has happened in that time frame. You know, when your kids get older, is it a little bit of a mind trip to remember how much they've grown in the last year or how fast it goes by?
I try not to think about it, honestly.
You try not to think about it?
Well, it's different for me, you know, being like part-time dad, because there'll be songs that are like, people will say, hey, don't take these moments for granted. I'm like, I'm not.
You're trying to soak that, you know, and we understand that experience too because of being a blended family. And most definitely right now we're on that break where we get Oakley, my bonus son, whom I love so much, and we get him for 8 precious weeks this summer, and we just really try to soak it up. Yeah. So much. Love it.
Yeah, so then when you're not with your kids, and then somebody's
it makes me almost emotional just thinking about
I know.
it. Really,
that's why I don't think about it.
I know, I get that. It is like that, especially that week or a few days after a visit. It's rough for us transitioning. We're like, okay, like be happy.
Yeah. Then you get Sabrina to bring some psychedelics to take your mind off it.
Help heal this.
She's like, that's my number one client. People who want to just zone out.
That is not how this works, and we'll share more information about that. But yeah, it was a good weekend. How about you? What did you? I felt like you said you went to do karaoke last weekend, right? Did that happen?
No. Wait, did I?
I feel like you do karaoke all the time. The man loves karaoke.
I do.
Folks.
But I didn't. I don't think I did. I don't know. I did. I don't remember.
He doesn't know. It's a blur.
Yeah.
Does that mean it was a good weekend or a bad weekend?
I did go on a date last week.
Whoa, this is breaking news.
And it was great.
Okay.
But I won't share too much.
Yeah, that's all right. You can
because I
keep
think
it
she
close.
listens.
Yeah. All right.
But
well, I think that going on a date is a good step.
Yeah.
Just to like get comfortable and dip the toes into the dating world again. We've already classified it as a battlefield. Love is a battlefield.
Yeah.
But I think it's fun to get to know people. And that's like a good first step. Just like remain curious about getting to know them.
This one was, it started off a little bit of a whirlwind. We were supposed to meet at one place.
Yeah.
And I like sitting out on the patio this time of year.
Warm summer patio evenings, the best.
So I went to this place that they were like, we have two tables on the patio, but they don't have shade. And I was like, she's like, you want to go check them out? And I did. And literally next to those two tables was a woman that I have history with.
Oh, no.
And so I was like...
They're too sunny. We can't.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
I told the truth to this gal that was meeting with me.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I got to pull an audible. We got to go somewhere else because that would be so awkward. It was like she was right here if I were sitting down.
Yeah. No, if I saw... There's a couple exes in town that if I saw them in that situation, I'd be like, I don't need to put myself through that. Let's go somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. But also, another take on that is that if you have patio seating as a restaurant, you should never ask the question, are you okay with no shade? The question you should ask yourself is, am I okay with running to the store and grabbing a couple more umbrellas? Right?
I mean, we live somewhere where it gets quite warm. It's already hitting, like, we might hit 100 today.
Yeah.
It's like, I think 98 was the forecast, and it melts you.
Yeah.
It'll get you.
People from elsewhere would go, it's that humidity that'll get you. At least you don't have humidity. I'm like, tell that to a chicken in the oven. That's what we experience. Oh, okay. I'm so glad it's not wet, though. Huh?
It's so funny because actually on the car ride over here, Oakley and I were talking about if you could live in any state, what state would you want to live in? And then it led us to a discussion about like natural disasters too in different areas. So I want to ask you that question. If you could live in any state in the United States, where would you want to live? And let's assume that like your close loved ones are like family. Like we're just talking about the
Hawaii.
area.
I already know.
Oh, that was fast.
Yeah.
Hawaii.
Or Texas, north of Dallas.
I've never been to that area. What's going on in Texas?
I've never been to that area either. I was born in Texas and lived there until I was 7. But that area seems like there's a lot of fun stuff to do.
Brene Brown lives in Texas, but she's in Houston, I believe.
And that's where all of our fans are. No, not
Is
all
that
of them.
You're pandering to the fans in Texas?
No, it sounds... Well, actually, anyway. No, Hawaii. Because that's like the closest place to heaven that I've experienced. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've only been there once, but it was amazing.
Same.
And did people think you were a local at all? I mean, I don't know. Maybe if you had developed more of a tan.
I don't know. I mean, I assume nobody really talked to me that was from there or whatever. But, I like to think that I could pass for a local.
I was expecting, and my expectations were high, but with a name like Keilani, that's the first question people ask. You must be Hawaiian. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry to disappoint you. My parents just wanted to confuse everybody because here I'm like half Japanese, born in Alaska, grew up on a bison farm with a Hawaiian name.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense. But I thought, finally, there's going to be a souvenir shop that has my name on a license plate or a keychain. And I was like, it's going to happen because that never happens. And there were no Keilani names. And I thought, there's going to be Keilani Street.
Well, Leilani.
But Keilani was one of their queens.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know the rest of her name, but Keilani was part of it. It was a long name. And so I was kind of like excited, but I didn't find anything. It was still beautiful and lovely, and I recovered, but I had high expectations.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I have never been to a gift shop that didn't have my name on a keychain.
Yeah, no, you're the bane of my existence. How nice it must be.
Yeah. Well, but see, here's the thing. If you have a gift shop, how easy would it be to like have an engraving machine?
Just
you know?
Yeah.
But but the experience though of looking for your name and finding it. Although it's like so normal for me that I doesn't even.
Because your name is so boring. Like when I talk about you with Zach, I have to be like James Timmons. I have to say your last name to clarify.
It's like which of the many Jameses?
James. Jameses? Is it James?
Jameses, yeah.
Oh, yeah. See, I don't like that either.
I hate when a name ends in S, like mine. James Timmons. So it's like the Jameses or the Timmonses. But it's just an apostrophe after the S.
Okay, I'll accept
Although
it.
that is usually meant for plural ownership.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's so
That's what I'm
confusing.
saying. I don't know how I feel about it. But, yeah, I can understand Hawaii for sure. It was beautiful. But I want to take a mini segue, and then I'll share the state that I would want to live into.
Okay.
But we were talking about gifts and gift shops. And I have like the strangest collection that recently a friend gave me a gift on her trip to Norway. My friend Alyssa and Ben, shout out. And I have a miniature mug collection.
Oh, cute.
But like, it's so random. And they're hard to find now. And I have so many from my childhood, but I don't I forget about it now. I really just add to it every once in a while when I go on a trip and I happen to find a mini mug, but no one has bought a mini mug for me. So it was super sweet that like she saw one on the other end of the country and was like, Keilani, you'll like this tiny little mug.
Mini mugs. That's a cute little. I used to collect shot glasses. That's kind of the same thing. Mini cups, right?
That's what my sister-in-law. She was like, when I was little, I liked shot glasses because I thought they were mini cups. But yeah, I was like, that's my thinking when I was little. I just like mini things that were like my size, and it's continued. And now I have 30 mini mugs, and I don't know what I'm going to do with them.
Yeah, when you move, then you start to look at your collections in a sobering way and go, do I really need these shot glasses?
I don't need them, but I can't bring myself to get rid of them.
Yeah. Well, you said you lived in your house for like over a decade, right?
This house I've lived in for 7 years, I think, but that's the longest I've lived in the Tri-Cities for a decade. That's the longest I've lived in any house in my life.
So if you had to move, then yeah, you will probably find. I remember when we moved from our first house.
You can pack in so much crap into a house.
Well, yeah, exactly. You accumulate, and then you're like, well, I'll deal with that later. And then when you have to deal with it later, I was throwing things into the garbage that were
cutthroat.
Like, yeah. Well, and people are like, well, maybe you get a yard sale. I'm like, that takes effort and time. For what, $20? No, this is going in the garbage.
Someone told me they made $1,500 at their yard sale.
Dang.
Yeah. I think I like a good yard sale.
What were they selling?
Their soul. I don't know.
Or drugs.
I'm just kidding. I don't know.
That'd be a great money laundering front.
Oh, boy.
Actually, that would be a terrible money laundering front.
Don't listen to this man. Don't listen to James's Timmons's.
That's really good advice. Hold on, time out. Zach, did you say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I said that you're just doing yard sailing wrong. That's all.
Oh.
And I feel like you're both one step away from, like, my grandma had a wall that was just porcelain plates. Like, she hung up porcelain plates with, like, weird designs on them. I feel like you're both right on the cusp of that.
Zach said your grandma had porcelain plates?
Yeah.
Oh. And he said we're right on the cusp of that.
Oh, no.
Yeah, just a wall of them.
Oh, man. Yeah, he's, I use this word lightly because I'm not classified as a hoarder, but I have some pack rat tendencies that I'm working through.
That's okay.
I'm working through. I'm in recovery even. I feel like Zach would probably say that I've made some strides.
That's great.
So I'm trying to be better.
What is it? Admission?
Accepting. I don't know. What is it? Yeah, acceptance.
Like the first stage is denial or whatever.
I've accepted that this is an issue that I need to work through.
I'm proud of you.
I'm making steps. Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Did I see our guest walk by the door?
Yes, our guest is here.
Oh, should we take a quick break and then just roll into it?
Yeah, we're gonna take a break.
I'm going to this side of the table, right?
Yes, we're doing a little musical chairs. When we return, Dr. Sabrina Hadeed will be joining us.
You guys are gonna see my bad side.
All right, welcome back. We are here with Dr. Sabrina Hadeed, and we are so excited to just soak up all the knowledge that you have. We have become fast friends, but there is so much that I still don't know. So this is fun because I have you held hostage now to ask all the questions that we're wanting to know. And you are a local to the area, but had moved away for I'm not sure quite how long, and now have been back for a little while, right?
20 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Can you get right up on the mic? Sorry. There you go. Okay.
There we go. Okay. Awesome. There we go. And actually, there's another musical connection, too, because her brother also did music. And
Joed, right?
Yeah, still does.
Yeah, I just had beers with him last week at Badger Canyon because we're both, there's like a whole connection in this room with former musicians, now in similar industries, because Joed and I are both in the real estate industry. And then Zach and I used to play shows together and are in the real estate industry as well, but also doing this podcast. So it comes full circle. It's perfect.
I love that about small towns, though.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a town of 1,500 where literally everyone knew everyone. So for the first 5 years I was here, when people would say, "Oh, everyone knows everyone in Tri-Cities," I was like, "You don't know. No, that's not how it is." But now I've been here a decade, and that's what happens. I'm like, "Oh, I guess I do." You're just one connection removed usually.
But there's still times where I'll go out in public and I don't know anyone, So a lot of times.
Which is, I like that.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah. So we were sharing before you came into the room that, we are just now meeting. And I am so green on the topic that we're going to talk about. And I admittedly was indoctrinated to be sort of skeptical about it. But I'm definitely coming with an open mind, and Keilani is very passionate about it as well, and she's exploring. So I want to be educated today.
Yeah.
Converted.
Yeah. I'd love to know how you started getting interested in psychedelic assisted therapy and where those seeds.
Sorry, Zach, what?
We need Sabrina to tilt her mic towards her face, and we can't really hear her.
He said, we can't really hear you. We need you to tilt the mic to your face.
Come on, man.
The 2-finger rule, basically, if you could just be 2 fingers away. Yeah,
Okay.
there you
So
go.
that's better.
And then really speak, project right into the mic. Yep. Okay. I'm sorry.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you. You can go back now.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry,
How I
Keilani.
got into
Okay, we're very curious to learn more about how you got into psychedelic assisted therapy and what some of those seeds that were planted that really allowed you to blossom in that field. When did that begin?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that mostly it began just a few years ago. I was still living in Oregon, and I think that definitely it was what sort of planted the seed, because I was following all the news as it was developing in real time. This was before COVID, and it was Proposition, I think, 109, which is now what is it called? Like a law. It's not just a proposition, but
Ratified? Right?
Yeah,
Right?
it's made its way.
Sure. Yeah, let's
further
go with that.
down the road.
I mean, that makes me think I
approval.
need to start watching that, I'm just a bill. What was that, Schoolhouse Rock? When they tell, it goes through, the steps. I'm replaying it. Whatever. I don't know. Look it up, though, if you haven't seen it. Everyone knows it.
Yeah.
So, the psychedelics were decriminalized, as were other drugs in Oregon, and kind of the process of opportunity when it comes to psychedelic medicine. I'm sure there was a lot of chatter at that time when you were living there.
Yeah, there was a lot of chatter, and I was also an adjunct professor at Oregon State University at the time. And so I think because of that, I would get these kind of news updates, and so I was naturally reading maybe more than normal, and so following and really interested. And because of that, I started to kind of dive into the research. And then I think most people have heard of Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. And I believe right before COVID restrictions of 2020, I went and listened to him speak in Bend. And that was, just super powerful to hear his own experiences and hear the way he was sharing his excitement about plant medicines for the betterment of well people, and then also for in a therapeutic space. And specifically, he spoke quite a bit about end-of-life care, palliative care, where psilocybin in particular was being used. And it was just so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And so that's the seed that was planted, I think, when it comes to therapeutic psychedelic use. And from there, I think like most people, especially therapists that become at all interested in the psychedelics, the use of psychedelics or psychedelic assisted therapy, just the momentum kind of builds and builds and builds. And the more that you read the really good, it's good research.
Yeah.
The more that I think that you just can't look away. It's like something great is there, some medicine that is actually really healing for people that have been quite stuck for a long time. It lends itself so well to the existing modalities that we already work in, right? It's like, IFS, internal family systems, EMDR, any trauma work, depression, anxiety. treatment-resistant depression. I mean, think about that for a moment. Like, you can't ignore that. If somebody's saying there's a medicine out there that has been around a really long time and has the capacity to soften defenses and really help someone, return to themselves and heal, you can't. I would question someone that would ignore that. It's okay, I think, and important to doubt and be skeptical. Of course. About anything.
Yeah. Like, come in with critical thinking.
Let's come in with an open heart and with curiosity, and let's read let's have it be science first.
For sure.
And then we can talk about more of the like soul work and like the definition of psychedelic, which I know Keilani and I have talked about, soul revealing or psyche revealing. Very well named.
Yeah, I love it because you're definitely describing the path that I've took as well in my interest with psychedelic medicine, and I felt like there was like the if I were using a metaphor of like the fire of curiosity, it was there, but it was definitely meeting you was like gas on the fire. Yes, like just like an explosion of excitement and getting to have a colleague to like share ideas and bounce ideas off of who's equally as excited. And it was definitely that research piece because as a therapist, there's so like I love and care for my clients so deeply, and it's such an honor to get to hear their story and be a space for them that's safe. And it's so difficult when I know that they hit this block. There's a block where it's so hard for them to move through it in their healing. Yeah. So, and there's I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but there's a counselor high of excitement when you see your client having a breakthrough too. Yeah. So I'm chasing that high. And here's this medicine that allows for this expedited healing through therapy, where the techniques, the modalities that we're using, the presence of just being a loving heart for our clients can really take full effect, and that block can be lifted, and that the leaders in trauma and leaders in neuroscience in the field are seeing and validating that information. It's, exactly. How can you not have that curiosity and openness?
Yeah. Okay, so just from hearing you guys' conversation and my lay brain trying to interpret it, would you say, so it sounds like these psychedelic therapy, is that the proper term? It helps like remove sort of the shame that Keilani's work you take like weeks trying to get through to get to the root of the issue or something, right?
It can. It can. Yeah. I think that it's described in so many different ways. Today, what's alive in my mind is that it softens defenses. Okay, right? Yeah. So we all have those defenses like the block you were talking about, and I know you know this. And they're often protective. They're there for a reason. Even if they're maladaptive, right? Even if they're dysfunctional, they're there for a reason. And a lot of times, I mean, we as humans are creatures of habit. And there's this buzz term in the space of psychedelics called the default network. And how I interpret that is it's that habitual way of being, right? We just go about our days and we kind of get stuck in our patterns. And our thoughts are like that too. We get stuck with our limiting beliefs. And no matter how much like cognitive behavioral therapy, no matter how much, EMDR, sometimes those defenses and those limiting beliefs are so rigid and so ingrained in our way of being that we just can't seem to free ourselves into better thinking. And psychedelics have this beautiful way of gently disarming those defenses and opening up a space for you to actually reconnect with what's already there.
Yeah.
So it's not like you become a new person. It's that you rediscover the, sort of the heart space before the world did what it does to people, and before your own insecurities did what, they do. Yeah. And so it's some of it's magic, a lot of it's science. And then I always say to clients that like, some of this is magic. It's very hard to quantify. It's hard to put words to. It's the mystery, right? That's another buzz term in the space. Is like we all need to go to the school of mystery where we don't have all the answers. And sometimes it's okay to just let it be really amazing and hard to describe.
Yeah.
But the softening, I think, is what comes up.
Yeah, I in preparation for this interview, I watched this quick little mini documentary on Netflix about psychedelics, and I saw that the guy who like discovered LSD, he was using it as therapy, but then obviously he got taken and abused as a drug, But I saw that he used it for like veterans of World War II or something, and they said 66 or no, higher than that. It was some high percentage of effectiveness, and I know that antidepressants are only like 33% effective, and I know there's a huge difference between the two of antidepressants and psychedelics. So
there's actually not as big of a difference as you might think. Yeah. So like SSRIs, which are traditional antidepressant,
selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, for people who don't know what the SSRI term is, but that's the majority of antidepressant medications.
Like a Zoloft, those kind of, Wellbutrin, those are SSRIs. And they actually, the way that they work in the brain is very similar to, for instance, psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms. I think that it's called the 2A receptor.
Yes. Serotonin 2A?
Serotonin 2A, right? And so it links to a very similar place in the brain. And then to your point, it from there becomes quite different than an SSRI.
Okay.
But that's the part that's mystery, right? That psychiatrists, neuroscientists are baffled by, right? They're still researching it and trying to figure out, like, why is this so different, even though it seems to be targeting the same part of the brain. So we'll see.
I mean, and I have kind of I don't know if you guys are going to disagree with this take on antidepressants. Like, I'm not really a believer of antidepressants because of I've seen so many people just have a negative effect on. So the fact that if there's something that has kind of the similar pathway, like you're describing, but more effective, then that, for me, that I'm all into that, Yeah. That sounds really great.
Yeah. Well, let me interject with what I think is the biggest problem with antidepressants, with SSRIs and other psych medications. I actually have a really open heart around them, meaning, like, I'm curious the effectiveness of them if they were used in conjunction with therapy, because they're not always used in conjunction with, right? They're prescribed. It's that medical model system that we're working from. And that's the difference between psychedelic, sort of like ketamine treatment clinics that just, provide you with the ketamine and then leave you to your own devices.
Yeah.
The research is basically not, we're not getting the same results. We're not seeing things, the impact of the medicine isn't lasting as long. And so what's really, really important is preparation before you use the medication. And then integration is essential. And some people in the space, which I tend to err more on that side, believe that integration is actually where the most powerful transformation happens. So that means after you've ingested the medicine and it's been a few days, a few weeks, a few months, and you're working with a trained professional psychedelic assisted therapist to integrate some of the powerful themes that came up while you were using the medicine. And that goes for low dose and high dose, which is psycholytic versus psychedelic, micro versus macro. There's a lot of micro dosing. The macro dosing is more like that traditional trip or journey. It's the same for both. And I wonder about that with SSRIs, because I have found, even in my experience, in Keilani, I'd be curious your thoughts about that. Like, even subjective qualitative research, right, where it's like I'm just looking across the scope of clients I've worked with for the last 20 years, and I see that clients that are using antidepressants while also regularly engaging in their own work with myself and with the community and resources and hobbies and all of the things, right, that they're typically doing better. So is it the medicine? Is it the work? Is it both? I would say probably both, but maybe not.
Well, there was actually a study, and I can't recall what it was, but I know that it was the professor that I worked with the most in grad school would always quote it, that it's 60% more effective when medication is taken and you have therapy. Yeah. So that medical model that's not incorporating like the brain or the heart really into the work, I do have an issue with. Like, if we're not prescribing the medication effectively, and if like doctors, and especially like often it's a primary care doctor who doesn't specialize in psychiatric medication, I have an issue with that, as well as the ketamine clinics that don't provide the proper set and setting, which kind of brings us to our next point of like the pieces that are really needed for it to be a therapeutic experience. So could you describe more about set and setting to us?
Absolutely, yeah. So if you're at all interested in psychedelic assisted therapy and you read up on it, you're going to hear set and setting over and over. And set refers to mindset. And so that's the preparation. So that could be, I think there's a general sort of minimal sessions, which is like 3 sessions to kind of get to know, if it's not a therapist you're already working with, it's get to know the therapist gets to know you, your story, some of the things you're hoping to get out of using the medicine. So then setting intentions, that's mindset. How you're going into a session where medicine is being used is really important. As you can imagine, right? Because we hear about bad trips. And we could certainly probably spend an entire podcast talking about, what that even means. And I think that in general, just to address it briefly, it really refers to when someone has a difficult experience. And I think that that can happen. It's possible that it can happen. And when you're using it in a therapeutic setting, it can be really powerful, actually. And you can use the negative thoughts or experiences to better understand yourself and to actually come into a place of healing. So it's like you can evolve from it being this disturbance and this difficult thing into it being something that you can really draw from and grow from. And that's the difference between just kind of going and doing, having your own psychedelic trip and having a bad experience and then not really knowing what to make of it or what to do with it.
Yeah.
Setting, to go back to the original question, refers to the space, right? So I think that most of the studies that I'm familiar with do take a lot of care in terms of creating a safe, comfortable space. And so that means, private, confidential, but also cozy. I actually think that there are so many nuggets coming out of the psychedelic work that are beyond the medicine work. And it's this attention to these details like setting. And I think, of course, therapists have known this for a while, right? Like you go to any therapist's office or wellness center, and there are going to be intentional choices made with the space. Like even this space, right? Like the wood paneling on the wall and the things on the shelf. It's pleasant. It's, it's tidy. It's clean. It's nice to be around. I feel calm when I'm here versus if I came in and the place was a mess and, you guys had like notes and books everywhere and there's like garbage billowing over. Like I would feel anxious, right? There would be something inside of me, even if I'm tolerant and have a high level of sort of familiarity with just chaos. It's still going to impact how I feel in the space, even without medicine. And so that setting is like being intentional with this, the space that you create, the environment you create, and then the relationship with the people that are holding space for you is super important. And I know, Keilani, you've both certainly touched on that quite a bit, like that this work is relational. It's relational, and healing happens in connection with others, with or without medicine.
Yeah, that therapeutic relationship, that's the vessel for healing. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of good information here. I'm feeling smarter.
It's happening.
So, when you were describing the setting, I was imagining lava lamps and velvet posters and black lights.
Is that what your office looks like? That's the vibe.
Not my
I'm
office.
kidding.
Yeah. No, it's a good point though, because it does bring up that stereotypical kind of 60s stigma, which is I'm not judging that myself. I don't.
If you do have a psychedelic experience, I think you should bring your own lava lamp, though.
I
know
the vibe. Really, connected to that.
I saw a TikTok with a DIY lava lamp using oil. And food coloring. Anyway, okay, so let me just try to spit out what I've gathered, and you guys tell me if I'm catching on or not. Okay, so it sounds like at every issue with trauma or whatever, there is a root that you want to get to, but because of our defenses and all the baggage that we come with, that you have to, it takes way longer to work through that. But it sounds like psychedelics and antidepressants are really good tools to sort of weed through that to get to the root issue, right? And then because using those two things with therapy, which the therapy is actually the more effective thing to use, right? It makes it way more efficient and effective. Is that
expedites therapy is one phrase that is used a lot in the psychedelic field, and you're right. And I love that you use the word tool. It's not a cure-all, it's a tool. And there are many tools in the toolbox, but this is a really exciting one that we're learning is quite effective. And I don't know if you have any, like one research fact that always stuck out to me, because I'm ketamine-assisted therapy trained, and in the fall I'm going to be fully trained in all psychedelics. I'm so excited.
We're going to party with psychedelics.
Lauren's house. I'm so
yes, I'm so excited about it. But that ketamine is about 80% effective for treatment-resistant depression. And there was one study in particular that stood out too, that was with veterans, where they've been doing a lot of this work. It's the VA who's saying, like, this is actually helpful, and it also saves them money, because at the end of the day, that's what they're looking for, is that it has to be effective in some way, where the veterans were hooked up to ketamine and they were doing IV infusions, but they were scrolling on their phones and they weren't given the proper set and setting. And what that looked like in terms of their healing and reduction in symptoms, versus if they were doing it in conjunction with a therapist, they had an eye mask on to go inwards, they were listening to the right type of music, there are different playlists specific for psychedelic assisted therapy, and the results that they found were impressive in showing that difference. So I think that that's an exciting piece that we're learning as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're only getting started, and it's so exciting, particularly for the veteran community. I mean, I just think that, you know, that population, it just has really been neglected for a really long time, and it's not for lack of trying. It's that it's complex trauma, and complex trauma is exactly what it sounds like. It is complex, and so it takes a lot. And so I don't know if you saw the news from a few days ago, but there was like a 75 million or billion. There's a big difference between those two. I don't know.
We can we'll search
dollar,
it. We'll fact check. Oh yes, I did. You shared it, and I was excited about it. You're right. I don't recall the number. A big number, folks. A very impressive big number.
Got approved. So there's spending. The Secretary of State. I mean, it was approved for research in psychedelic assisted therapy with active duty military personnel, which I think is a really beautiful population to think about urgency, right? If we know that there's a medicine available that can expedite healing, that can actually work really well with complex trauma and treatment-resistant depression, let's start with our military.
My ex-husband was a veteran, and I've often thought, I wish that this were something that he could be open to. And I don't have a communication with him anymore, but it's just having been in a relationship with someone and lived with someone who has struggled with that trauma. It's a really exciting thing when there's someone that you care about who's struggled in some way, to think that there could be a hopeful way for them to heal through that. So it's so exciting. In fact, so in this excitement, it's really built a momentum with Sabrina and I, and some of the dreaming that we've done. And it's all still in the planning phases, but do we want to share a little bit of it?
Sure.
Ooh, I want to know.
So
it's really exciting.
Well, we're going to the Psychedelic Science Conference in Denver in just a couple weeks. So we're so excited about that. All of the leading researchers. Yeah, she's going to be volunteering. It's going to be so much fun.
Nice.
But we have a lot of plans in terms of really collaborating with psychedelic assisted retreats. And I would love to really play around with ideas of incorporating some of the Gottman work that I've been certified in, which is a marriage therapy, relationship therapy, and what that would look like in a psychedelic retreat that would really allow couples to work through maybe some of their stuck points and reconnect with one another. And just kind of daydreaming about those possibilities, because I really think that we have an opportunity to make an impact. And for me, that's what feels exciting about this work. So I stay tuned, because, we plan on definitely continuing to explore where that can go.
Yeah, I'm so excited about it. I mean, it's still in the incubation
period.
It is, but it is an exciting incubation period. And I think we both feel really strongly about making it accessible and to, this community, the community that we love and the community that ultimately helped raise me. And so I'm excited to see where that goes. The one thing I do want to make sure that I say while I'm here, because I made it a mental kind of point in my head. I was like, don't forget to say this. Because it's become a really important part of my own identity as a psychedelic assisted therapist and as an advocate for this work. And that is this. I want to role model this idea of being open and honest with my own psychedelic experiences. Like, I think that we're starting to shift the narrative there. I think that, you know, the old narrative is like, we have to maintain a professional stance because some psychedelics are not legal. In fact, there's only one that's legal right now in this state, which is ketamine. If you're in Oregon, it's psilocybin and ketamine, but then there's, you know, LSD, MDMA, DMT, ayahuasca, all of those that are not legal. But it's still important to talk about whether or not you have had experiences, to normalize it and destigmatize it. And, you know, back to what you were saying about what we think of when we think of psychedelics, whether it's a lava lamp or a psychedelic poster, let's also have it be like my face and Keilani's face, and our eagerness and excitement, you know, about the medicines. Let's expand what we know about it. And so that was just important for me to note, is to say, like, I have had beautiful psychedelic experiences myself, which is a part of what also makes me so excited about this work. And I encourage, you know, everyone to start talking about it more. You know, I think I listened to a podcast that was 5 years old, and I was hearing, I don't remember what it was, but I was hearing professionals say, like, maybe I've done some psychedelics. And it was this very, like, I don't know, it was like, let's bring it out of the shadows is what I was thinking. Like, what's the harm? And I think the privilege too of myself, you know, being a, I'm a Middle Eastern American woman, but I'm still a white woman, and I'm a woman of privilege. And so I do think it's safer for me to sit here and to talk about the fact that I have used psychedelics, you know, versus someone else that may be open about it and then have, you know, legal repercussions. I don't know what they would be in this state, but they're possible. And so I'm certainly not endorsing illegal activity. Yeah. But I am endorsing talking about powerful experiences you've had with psychedelics, especially if you are a professional practicing with these medicines.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Thank you for that bravery. And I love that. I did share, I think it was even maybe on our last podcast or the one before. It was one recently. It could have been the one that aired yesterday. It's all a blur. But of me really starting just last year in microdosing psilocybin, and that really helped me work through some of the areas where I felt some insecurity, or I felt like there were excuses to not pursue big dreams that I had. And that was just feeling ickier to have, like, that I felt like there was a dormancy to the action step, even though the excitement was sparked. And so in that work, which I did very intentionally, I did a lot of journaling. I really made sure to have an intention. I was in communication with my own therapist, because I really practice what I preach. I want to make sure that I have to be healthy if I want to provide a sense of stability and health for my clients. So that really helped me get to the point where I'm like, I'm doing this podcast. I'm going to get into psychedelic assisted therapy. Like, what's next? Who do I call? Like, the action steps felt so much easier.
Yeah. No, I mean, okay, you guys are definitely selling me on it now. Okay, I have a burning question though. So I hear the benefits of, like, guided psychedelic therapy, but is there, like, a caution against, like, a prescription being abused or something like that? Or is it like, because I know, what is it, DMT? That's like a natural agent or whatever you want to call it. So
yeah, it's such a good question, and it's one that is really, really important in the space of drug use of any kind, right? Because we're talking about, I mean, it's beautiful to call it medicine. I believe it is medicine. It's healing. It's also drugs, right? We're talking about doing drugs, so let's call it what it is, and that's a nod to Dr. Carl Hart, who wrote this amazing book. He's written, I think, 2, but the one that I'm most familiar with is Drug Use for Grown-Ups, and he's all about kind of let's not stop at decriminalizing drugs. Let's actually legalize drugs. And we could get into a whole debate about that, which we won't, and we don't have time for. But it is this idea of, like, let's call it drugs. It's drugs we're talking about, right? And so drugs are abused, absolutely. The rate of abuse for psychedelics is the lowest of any drugs,
including
could be
like alcohol
abused.
Is a drug.
For sure, I agree.
Alcohol. And we also it's really important to think about, when we categorize abuse, what we're talking about, right? So it's very unlikely. I don't know. I'm not familiar with any incidents of dependency on psychedelics, when we think of like a chemical dependency, like where you go through withdrawals if you wean yourself. There might be out there. I'm just not familiar with them. What I am familiar with is when we talk about abuse of psychedelics, we're looking at what is the person gravitating towards that is about dissociation, right? What are they wanting? Are they wanting a dissociation, repeatedly in a synthetic way? And what is that about?
That's such a good point. Yeah, because it's like where your work is to heal the reason why they're turning to a drug abuse in the first place.
Exactly.
Okay, so then that's a beautiful point. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry.
And then working with a trained professional is really important, because that's the breaking the system, the medical model, right? We're not just handing out a psychedelic and saying, enjoy, and then come talk to us about it. We're saying, let's prepare ourselves, our minds, that mindset, set and setting.
Yeah.
And then have the experience in a safe way, and then integrate. I mean, if you think about it, a really good example is, we call these things trips, right? And there's some people are like, well, let's not call it a trip anymore. But it is a trip. It's a journey, right? You're going on a mental journey. It's a non-ordinary state of consciousness. But imagine it's a vacation where you're actually taking a trip. Anybody, I think, can relate to this, whether you're taking a trip, to a different state or somewhere foreign within your own state or abroad. When you come back to your home and your job, you feel a little different. The perspective shift happens. That doesn't last very long. Anyone that's been on vacation and has come back to work can relate. Like, okay, well, the relaxation from Hawaii is gone, right? I would challenge that if you work with a therapist to talk about what was it that you benefited from when you were on your vacation. What did you enjoy the most? When were you most connected with your soul, with your heart, with your relaxed nervous system, and then trying to use those points to find them in your non-tripping life, your non-vacation life, that the same could come. That's integrating perspective from a vacation, which is not that unlike integration from a psychedelic journey. I mean, you're doing the same thing. You're looking for nuggets. I mean, it's different because it's more therapeutic, but still.
Yeah, I love that. It's more of an offensive approach versus like defensive against like your traumas, because that's the problem.
Good way to put it. I like that.
That's the
He's
problem.
full of sports analogies. We can rely on him.
It's a really good one. I'm going to borrow that. Offensive. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
There's a softness there versus defense.
Yeah. Right? Well, that's my problem with antidepressants. I feel like it gets overprescribed a lot of times, like just to kind of like, oh, you have these feelings. Well, here's a numbing agent, and don't get off of it though,
And there's a lot of side effects too.
Yeah.
It's it's unfortunate. I think there's benefits, but
there are benefits.
Again, with everything, it should be done therapeutically, and unfortunately, like that consistency in the field isn't there, and that's what I'm excited we can provide.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
No, please.
I will role model again with Zoloft saved me postpartum. I mean, postpartum depression. Was the first time I ever had tried an SSRI, and I will say that it helped me survive and ultimately thrive. So I'm a fan of any medicine that's going to work. I just think let's evolve, right?
Yeah.
Let's not stay. I think that our system of mental health is dated in general. How we treat mental illness, mental disturbances, mental issues in this country we're not just this country. I think globally, we're in the dark ages, and let's come out, not just psychedelics, but let's learn all of the ways that we can evolve. I mean, I recently returned to my stomping grounds from my 20s, the psychiatric unit. It had been like 22 years since I had been there. And one of the reasons that I actually went on to get my master's and then eventually PhD was because I was so disturbed by sort of the clinical coldness, the lack of warmth and intention. And when I went, sadly, 23 years later, the walls were like the same color. The group room hadn't been updated. The staff, it was a similar burnout vibe. I mean, I just was so sad about it. I was like, why are we doing the same thing over and over again, expecting something different? I don't know where I got on that tangent, but
I liked it. I think I think it's a conversation that's needed, and snaps. I agree. Wow. I feel like we've learned so much. I also, before we wrap up, I want to bring up that this is not a medicine that fits for everyone. And there are certain considerations that need to be made in the screening process of who might benefit the most and who this might actually not work well for. Could you speak a little bit to that too?
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. I think we're learning more and more about that. I think for right now, with the research I'm familiar with, I think that there are some clear caution. I will say, I think that probably a disqualifier is if there is schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder in your background or in your family history, particularly if it's for yourself. This psychedelics would not be a medicine that would be a good fit for you.
Because you're already experiencing an altered state of consciousness in those diagnoses and wouldn't want to trigger any kind of episode of psychosis. Yes. So there'd be a difference in the brain chemistry of someone who's had those experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah, any history of psychosis, we would proceed with caution. I say that because I do know that there's at least one study, and I want to say it was Phil Wolfson. I could be wrong about that, but there was a study around postpartum psychedelic use. I think it was ketamine, looking at postpartum psychosis. And I believe that now we're saying that it is safe for women that have experienced psychosis as long as it was a postpartum psychosis.
Okay, that makes sense.
So there are some exceptions, but there are clear, screening is a really important part of it, just like with any medication. And there are some clear rule outs for sure. And I even would say, that when I'm screening, because we're not just talking about people that like meet criteria for a mental disorder, we're also talking about well people that are wanting to better understand themselves and maybe have a creative, get their creativity sparked. I mean, psychedelics are really, really great.
Yeah, the Beatles.
For creativity. And it can be really powerful. And so I think that even with those individuals, we would always gather enough information to make sure that the person was ready and that the medicine was a good fit for them, and that we are a good fit for the person wanting to do the medicine, because if that relationship is a misfit. But so back to your question, the classic rule outs would be like schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, any psychosis in your background. And then I think that there's some research that's looking at borderline personality disorder in terms of it maybe not being a good fit for the medicine, but I'm not sure what that research, where the status is of those studies.
And there's a range too in what someone's symptoms could look like within those diagnoses. So I think that is really like a case by case at times too. Yeah.
And it depends on the medicine, right? Because the class of psychedelics is there's so many, right? So like psilocybin, I know there's still, to the best of my knowledge, there's a divide where some researchers are saying it's okay to be on an SSRI when you use psilocybin, and then others are like, it's absolutely not okay because of the risk of serotonin syndrome. And I'm not sure what, I don't know what the right answer is, and I'm not the medical prescriber, so luckily I don't have to be the one to make that decision. But I know that it's still emerging. We're still discovering what are the rule outs, what are the precautions, and we're going to do so cautiously and carefully. And that's an important plug to make, is that, although I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't have festival experiences, by all means, be safe about it. Use a harm reduction model, know where your medicine's coming from. There are even test kits you can get online to test the medicine, to test the psychedelics, the drug. And then also, be honest with, if you are going to work with someone, the medications you're on, the history that you have, because, we are talking about drugs, and drugs can be really dangerous and misused, and, be cautious, be safe, talk to somebody about it, talk to, your therapist, talk to your doctor about it. Yeah. Do your own research, but be intentional.
Yeah.
Another interesting piece about psychedelic medicine, because we are talking about possible ways, or your question, James, was about could someone have a dependence? Is there an addiction factor with psychedelics? But also, there have been some really interesting studies about how psychedelics can help people who have an alcohol dependence and getting into recovery. Do you know any information about that?
I do.
Oh, wonderful.
It's so exciting. It's so exciting. Because honestly, and I've worked in the substance abuse counseling field for over 10 years now. At least half of my career has been dedicated to working with individuals that struggle with substance abuse. And I also have a history of substance abuse in my immediate family, and have a tender spot in my heart for anyone that struggles with abuse, but also for people that love people that struggle with abuse.
Oh, it's so complicated and hard.
It's so complicated. Yeah. And especially, you know, society stigma. The way that we treat people with substance abuse problems is really sad to me. And I hope I continue to be a part of changing the narrative around how much compassion those individuals need, because it does not discriminate. Drug addiction does not discriminate.
Right.
It affects everyone equally. It doesn't matter what background you come from or how strong your internal, system is. Like, everyone is vulnerable to drug addiction. It's not just alcohol treatment, it's drug addiction in general, but there are some really amazing studies available that look at ketamine in particular as a really effective way to treat alcohol abuse. And they're profound. You know, people are reporting that they no longer have cravings, that their relationship with themselves and alcohol changes. And this is in conjunction with therapy, of course. And then there are substances like ibogaine that comes from iboga, which I believe is a bark from South Africa, I want to say.
Can they make a tea? Is that the...
it can be a tea. Can be. Okay. Yeah. I think it is traditionally used as a tea. That ibogaine treatment is really effective for opioid abuse. And this gets me super excited, particularly if anyone has been watching any of the documentaries coming out around the Sackler family and around the settlement regarding the opioid crisis and how much Big Pharma was a part of that problem. That some of the settlement money, I believe in Kentucky of all places, good shout out to Kentucky, the politicians over there are doing something right. I'm very happy to report. I did not expect that, and that's my own bias. I will check. Kentucky.
Kentucky, you cool.
Yeah, you're cool.
Shout
you
out
are
to Kentucky.
Using the settlement money from Big Pharma and the opioid crisis to fund psychedelic assisted therapy for the treatment of opioid abuse. And I believe that there is a legal clinic that is going to be able to provide ibogaine here in the US, which is really exciting because up until recently, ibogaine is only available outside of the country. So I know that there are some amazing sites based out of Mexico. I know one of them is like Beyond, I think is what it's called, and they're doing some amazing work. And ibogaine, so back to this, can it be abused? Can psychedelics be abused? Look it up. I implore you to look it up and look at people talking about it that are overcoming addiction in a way that we have never seen before, unlike Suboxone or things like that, where someone can be on that for long periods of time and it becomes almost another dependency. Ibogaine is something that people are doing once, one time. And the transformation that is happening internally in their mind, body, and spirit is so profound that they don't need it to go into another ibogaine experience, but also they are finding that they are able to stay sober and have a totally, not totally, I shouldn't say, but a really different, profound healing. And so look into it. It's really, really incredible stuff. And there's so much hope there. I mean, that's, again, you can't ignore this. No matter what your bias is, you cannot ignore that these medicines are providing healing in a way that we just need so desperately right now.
Yeah.
And they follow up with the participants of those studies, after a couple of weeks, a couple of months, after a year, after several years. So that's the other exciting piece too, is the longevity of that shift and that healing process. So are we converting you a little bit more, James?
Well,
I want to update how you're feeling over here.
Well, I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, we could do a whole series of episodes on this because I'm so fascinated and interested. But unfortunately, the time doesn't serve us. Is that the right? Yeah. But gosh, because there's all these nuggets. Like there was this. I'm thinking of a couple friends, that I'm gonna pass this information along to, and just really, because just at face value, my take on why it's effective for treating addiction is a point that you made earlier about how it's a tool to get to the root of the issue, and like it's way less likely to be abused. The psychedelics are way less likely to be abused because you're solving the reason why you were turning to drug abuse in the first place, right? So then, of course, it's going to be effective against alcohol abuse. So yeah, that's just so fascinating. I feel like this is a very underrated topic. So I'm no longer a skeptic. But I might be an abuser.
No.
I'm kidding.
He's an abuser of karaoke. That's what I know. He's always trying to get me to go out to do karaoke, and you're guilty of that.
That's a great vice to have.
It's the Asian in us. We can't stop.
Right? Yeah, your people created karaoke.
My people.
Passed it on to my people across the Japanese Sea? Korea and Japan. Okay.
So
anyway, okay, this is a rough segue into advice, but we're going to take it.
Okay. So, and Dr. Sabrina Hadeed, she was going to be sticking around to help with this advice.
Thank you for all that information,
You're
too.
welcome.
This has been amazing.
It has.
It's
been so much fun. I feel like I'm going to see if I can twist her arm to come back sometime, but it's been so wonderful. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So this is a piece of advice. I'm thinking this person must have listened to maybe one of our previous podcasts where
a fan.
Well, that's the only reason someone would write in to be able to find the link. Please do write in. So if you click on our link tree, there will be a link to write in to give anonymous advice. And so they must have heard when I've mentioned psychedelics in the past and what that looks like. But so this person says, hi, Keilani and James. I have a friend who has used different drugs recreationally. It seems kind of like all drugs, but psychedelics are part of what they are mentioning.
Oh, perfect.
I know, yeah. And they feel that they're really doing it for that fun and party vibe, and are wanting them to experience more of a therapeutic experience. So they've tried to talk to them about what that means, and they don't really seem to be understanding. This friend also has struggled with relationships and in their own alcohol dependence. So it sounds like they're really wanting their friend to be open to the idea of a therapeutic experience, and how can they maybe provide give them some interest in that, or see if they are open to it. That's where this question is leading. How do I convince my friend that they should try to do this therapeutically, and perhaps that can help them? My initial thought is that we don't have control over someone else's decisions.
So this friend is using drugs recreationally.
Our dear listener's friend is using, they've mentioned not just alcohol, but also they're dabbling in, it looks like, Coke, but also psilocybin. Okay. Those are the main three. But when it comes to psilocybin, they're really wanting them to experience and have a therapeutic experience. Mm-hmm. And is there a way to provide an opening for that, of curiosity for their friend? Which there's a lot of pieces of information in this that we're missing.
Yeah.
And again, I think a big piece that is always important when we're saying I want my friend, or I want this person to see things differently or do things differently, is that we don't have control over other people's actions and decisions that they make.
Yeah.
But what kind of conversation could be brought up? What could that sound like if we were to bring it up to this friend?
Yeah, go for it. I don't really have anything to say.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, my inclination actually goes to the person that wrote in for advice.
Yeah.
You know, my mind and my heart kind of go to this place of I can tell that you are concerned about this friend. And I would just start there. I would start with communicating that concern from a place of care and a place of non-judgment, right? So that's the best place to start anytime we want to try to convince someone of something, right? Is let's first think about, why do we want to convince them of that thing?
Yeah.
Right? So why do you think that this person, why do you want them to be open to having a therapeutic relationship with the drugs? And to me, it sounds like because you're concerned about their current relationship with the drugs, or maybe you're also concerned about something else going on for them. So have that conversation.
Yeah.
Talk to them about how much you care about them, and how much you want to see them maybe be more present in their lives. Whatever it is, be thoughtful about, why is it that I want this for that person? Yeah. Start there. And then you'll see what emerges.
Yeah.
I think if our dear listener here has their own, they've had their own positive experience and that's driving it, or that with psychedelic medicine, or that they are themselves maybe on this process of learning more and feeling excited about the research, there's nothing wrong with sharing something that excites you or an experience that was positive for you. But maybe they need to dial down this urge to change their friend or for their friend to make a different decision. But what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, the way I'm hearing it, they're trying to encourage the alcohol and cocaine to be used therapeutically?
No, I think they're wanting specifically, they mentioned like psychedelic medicine.
Yeah.
Like how can they have a more like use that in a healing way, but they're currently not. Like right now they're using their psilocybin use has been more about like going
just
and
recreational.
Like, which is a very different experience.
Yeah.
If you're not factoring in like
it's not a question about drugs. It's not a question about drugs.
Okay.
It's a question about pain, right? Like Gabor Mate, right? Nod to him. Don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain. Don't ask why the substance use, ask what's the intention. And if the intention is to mask what you're feeling or to have fun and you can't have fun without it, then let's explore what that's about. But again, for you to be the person to want your friend to access this healing, talk about that versus trying to sell them on how amazing psychedelics are. It's like start with that heart place, and then when they're ready, when they're open, when they start to get curious about it, they'll come to you and they'll have a different readiness for change to use sort of
that's a great point, because like in like rehab, for example, it's, people are there because they have an addiction to something deadly, so they have to get that under control. But then a lot of people will stop at just suppressing that urge to turn to that addiction. But it's like, no, that addiction was just a symptom of a deep problem. So you got to get to the root. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, and this is what we've learned about childhood trauma and the likelihood of this is part of the ACEs study, adverse childhood experiences. I've mentioned it before, but the likelihood of not just physical ailments, but things like chemical dependence on drugs. It's a need to like cover and mask the trauma and the pain there, to disassociate or to numb or to escape. Exactly. And so I really love the way that you phrased that advice. Thank you so much in bringing some clarity to this whole discussion. It was delightful.
And I love the shift from talking about drugs as bad, because drugs are not bad, right? Drugs are actually not deadly. I mean, any more so than anything else. Cars are deadly, right? Like knives are deadly, but not when you're chopping vegetables.
True.
Drugs are not bad. Drugs are drugs. What's difficult and what's bad, so to speak, is our relationship with those, right? Yeah. Similar to if I use a knife as a weapon, it's not the knife that's to blame.
Yeah.
And so like, let's stop talking about drugs as bad and instead start talking about what is the relationship we have with substances that is complicated and that is potentially deadly or harmful.
And putting it in the right context too, where like caffeine is a drug and most would say that it's a beneficial drug or something, maybe even that they gets them through the day. There's also been kids who've drank like 10 Red Bulls and have not used caffeine appropriately and then have a heart attack. Use the drug appropriately. And it's more, again, like the way that someone chooses to interact in the relationship they have with it. So that was a great point. Thank you so much for joining us today.
This has been wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please, delightful listeners, please like, subscribe, write in your advice. We love the space that we can provide here. It's an honor to be here, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye-bye. That was great.